John.
All right, Dr. Michael Salla, how are we doing today?
Oh, great. It's a really good day. I mean, today we're going to start learning much more about 3i Atlas as it approaches its perihelion with the sun.
Yes, so I want to get straight into that. Before, I would love to, I've known about you for some time, and so it's great to finally have a conversation. But maybe you can give people, some of our audience that doesn't know you, just a brief intro into who you are.
Sure, yeah. I was an assistant professor in the School of International Service at American University. And in 2001, I saw a video called the Disclosure Project press conference where there were 21 people talking about a cover up of UFOs. And at the time, I was really focused on trying to understand, what is it that drives international conflict? Because that's how you resolve it. And so I looked at that and I thought, wow, this answers a lot of questions about what really drives international conflicts, why they're so intractable, and why peacemakers have such a difficult time resolving anything. And so I did a deep dive and I found out that those 21 witnesses were absolutely telling the truth, that there's this extensive cover up of UFOs, extraterrestrial life, and that's what drives international conflict all over the world.
Wow. I mean, and speaking of this cover up of UFOs, like you said, Three Eye Atlas. I know you've been covering this. Maybe give anybody who hasn't heard of this thing, I would be shocked, right? But maybe just give a brief understanding of what Three Eye Atlas is and what people are saying, and then really your thoughts. I'd love to know.
Sure. Well, 3i Atlas is an interstellar object, and it was first observed in July of this year. And because of its speed and direction, it was quickly determined that it was an interstellar object. So it came from another solar system, which makes it a very old uh, comet or object. And so people began to speculate immediately about what this is. And probably one of the most prominent was this Harvard professor, Avi Loeb, who became known because he earlier had been describing another interstellar object, Oumuamua, and he determined that it was a artificial object that was essentially a derelict spacecraft. Now, this new object, 3i Atlas, which stands for the third interstellar object. So the first was Oumuamua, then there was another one called Borislav, and this one. And so now people know that it's an interstellar object, and because of its trajectory and the way in which its speed and the gases it was emitting, uh, people began to speculate, well, this is no kind of natural comet. This is an artificial comet. And this is where you get into the information from a lot of people, quite a range of sources, remote viewers, channelers, people who saying that they have access to insider information, all saying that this is some kind of artificial body and that it may be associated with some kind of event that's coming up. And so people have been tracking it. Photos were taken but weren't released, and probably the most prominent example of that was when 3i Atlas approached Mars and was at its closest point to Mars. There's a number of orbiters around Mars. These orbiters are from different nations, 6 of them in total, or 6 orbiters, and the only nation that released any pictures was the European Space Agency, and it released a very blurred picture or indistinct, whereas NASA has something called the high-rise camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it also took images, so that would have been 2nd of October, and hasn't released them. And so people are saying, "Well, what's all that about? What are they covering up?" So you can see people are asking questions. NASA and official astronomical units are very parsimonious in what they're releasing to the public.
𝗪𝗪𝗛𝗡, the elite private membership club for the modern mystic, exploring powerful teachings on spirituality, self-awareness, ancient wisdom, a deep dive into meditation, mindfulness, and transformational practices designed for those ready to lead their own journey. Are you ready to step up?
So then, is it your estimation that someone within, it could be any government agency, but let's just use NASA, that they know what this is, whether it's a threat or not? Are we assuming that they are hiding some knowledge, or do you think that no one knows?
I think people do know. And I think a decision was made to keep this covered up as long as possible. But that, I think, isn't going to be something that is ultimately successful, because as it approaches the sun, today, October 29, is when the Three-Eye Atlas is in perihelion with the sun. So this is where things are going to start happening. I mean, it'll either just continue on its trajectory, which will be like a lot of astronomers say, well, nothing to see here, or it'll do something called an Oberth maneuver, which is a maneuver that happens to utilize the sun's gravitational field for a slingshot effect. So you could accelerate, change your trajectory, and so forth. So people are looking at that, but the really big issue here is that the International Asteroid Warning Network issued a notice just a week ago saying that Three-Eye Atlas is going to be studied from November 27 through to January 27, and that that period is when Atlas starts coming towards the Earth, and it reaches its closest approach to the Earth. And I think that they're doing that because someone knows that Three-Eye Atlas is not an ordinary comet. It is something else, and that they are getting ready for it to release either a lot of fragments. I mean, this is what comets do after they've achieved perihelion with the sun, that they begin to fragment, or if it's a mothership, it's going to start releasing probes. And so that's where it makes sense that they're asking the world's astronomical community to study Three-Eye Atlas. So you can see a kind of progression here of like having kind of like just a basic interest in Three-Eye Atlas, taking the odd photo here and there with the Hubble telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, the Gemini telescopes, with the Mars orbiters. And now all of a sudden they're moving in a high gear and saying, well, every telescope in the world should be focused on Three-Eye Atlas for those 2 months.
And you know what I want to do? I want to go back just a second to give everyone a good understanding for a subject that you've been studying for a very long time within UFO disclosure. And can we get just your understanding as now on UFOs, aliens, what you believe to be the truth as you have gained it, and then we'll come back to what we were just speaking on.
Sure. Well, what I've concluded after 20 plus years of research into this is that UFOs are absolutely real. Many of them have crashed as a result of many things, whether it's weather anomalies, whether it's being targeted by directed energy weapons, active radar. Some of them have crashed over the years, and the Roswell crash is one of the earliest, but there were ones that were before that as well, like the Los Angeles air raid incident in 1942. That was also another example of a crash. So you've had these UFOs crashing, and that they've been secretly retrieved. Government agencies began to study these. The military asked corporate contractors to study them and begin to reverse engineer the technologies. So this is where you get the first attempts to develop human anti-gravity craft, because they quickly determined that these craft that were being recovered, these UFOs, used exotic propulsion systems. They used exotic alloys, and so these were studied in the 1940s and 50s, and eventually they worked out how to do it. And so by the late 1950s and late 1960s, you have the first prototype anti-gravity craft being released, flying saucer shapes. Later on, they started to develop other shapes like the flying triangle type shape, and they've got other uh, shapes as well. Like they've got rectangular shaped craft as well. These are kind of used as weapons platforms. So over the decades, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, they developed secret space programs using their resources and keeping all of this off the books. They did it because the CIA legally is able to raise funds without congressional authorization or appropriation. So the CIA does all its dirty tricks, generates billions of dollars off the books, and then funnels it through the Pentagon to these classified programs. So the end result is that you got enormous amounts of money, and people estimate that the unofficial black budget is over $1 trillion. I mean, it's more than what the Pentagon is going to get in 2026, over $1 trillion. And with that, they build these massive underground bases all over the planet. They build fleets of anti-gravity craft, and they build bases on other planets, on the moon. And so they have an extensive network of advanced technologies that are out there, and they are playing catch up with extraterrestrial civilizations. And so this is where you get the kind of analogy of like Meiji Japan during the colonization era, the age of when the Americans and the British and the Europeans went to Japan, and the Japanese realized that they were dealing with a superior technological civilization, and so Japan made the decision that they would reform themselves and take in all of these advanced technologies and become a major power in their own right, and eventually challenge the colonial powers. And the United States has followed that path meticulously. And right now, a lot of the UFOs people see up there are reverse engineered spacecraft that belong to the Navy or to the Space Force now, and that these are quite advanced, and maybe not quite as advanced as the extraterrestrial spacecraft, but very close.
Mhm. And this, you've opened up a whole can of worms here with this. But as I said, I want to connect your understanding of things. The reason I wanted to get your grasp on where we're at is because one of the things that's been floated around a whole lot for the last few years has been the talk about, I believe it's Project Bluebeam, the idea of potentially hoaxing an alien invasion of some sort in order to continue governmental or deep state control over the populace. So do you feel that 3i Atlas is in any way involved potentially in that, since it's on everybody's minds?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, the Project Bluebeam, I mean, rumors of that go back to the 1990s. There was a French-Canadian researcher, Serge Monas, that wrote a book in French about Project Bluebeam. And soon after his book came out, he died of a heart attack after being taken into custody, kind of like like a child custody case that was just came out of nowhere. So people speculated that he was too close to the truth. And this does happen. I mean, this is part of the history of this field, that people who get too close to the truth often disappear or are suicided in some way. So this happened to Serge Monast, and so he was one of those that described the elaborate process that was put in place for Project Bluebeam, in terms of the different stages, and that there would be a imitation, kind of like false coming, or false second coming, that advanced holographic technologies would be used in simulations of, say, a fake alien savior, that could also be used to simulate attacks. And so I suspect that what is happening is that there are those that will try to co-opt the Three Eye Atlas event, which many of the sources that I've kind of like gone to understand what is this, say that it is benevolent, but there's wide diversity there as well. Pardon me. Some say it's populated by positive extraterrestrials, others that it's kind of negative extraterrestrials. So there's a lot of diversity in opinions, but I think the bottom line is that whatever Three Eye Atlas is, there are those on Earth in who have a lot of power still, that are probably going to use their resources to portray it in a certain way, and that way that many people suspect that they're going to portray it is as part of some kind of alien false flag event, whether it's a salvation event, whether it is an attack. Either scenario can work, but I think there's something that people suspect is coming that's going to be a worldwide deception, and that Three Eye Atlas will probably be involved into that.
Yeah, my mind races with all of this. That I feel like there has been a change in the rhetoric in what's been, kind of been going on over the last. I mean, there's definitely been a change since the '90s, right? We couldn't discussions like these weren't out in the public as much as they are now, or mainstream. But you reminded me by touching on all of the dark money that is funding all these intelligence agencies and potentially all of the crafts, et cetera, of this term, which I know you're going to be familiar with, but a breakaway civilization, right? And there was the idea that there was a breakaway civilization. It can mean a whole host of things, right? From a group of humans who are integrated into society to a group of technocrats who have all the money and all of the technology and things like that and aren't with us. In your estimation, is there a breakaway civilization that operates within and without our society? And if so, who is in control of that technology and them?
Again, excellent questions. Yes, there definitely is a breakaway society, and that is this extensive network of deep underground facilities that have been secretly built. And there are estimates of these that range from a couple of hundred to 500 in the United States alone, and up to 5,000 of these all over the world. So these are bases that were built by corporate contractors for the militaries to be able to study not only these extraterrestrial craft that were being found all over the world through a variety of events, but also to study ancient civilizations and the remnants of them, that the Earth is like a labyrinth of tunnels. And so they began to discover this labyrinth of tunnels, and what they did was they began to repurpose them. And this is where you get into the whole idea of an underground rail system, a maglev system, where they can travel at supersonic speeds, or even hypersonic speeds from the East Coast to the West Coast. So the trip from California to New York would take like 30 minutes using one of these maglev trains. And the bases themselves are like underground cities. And these underground cities, I mean, they use all sorts of advanced technologies. I mean, the healing technologies, for example, I mean, they use things such as electrotherapy, holographic healing, They use frequencies, sounds, med beds. People have talked about med beds. Even Donald Trump put out a tweet about med beds. So this is all absolutely real, and it's being used for decades in this breakaway civilization that's underground. And in the meantime, on the surface of the United States, people still get into their kind of like fossil fuel based cars that can only go like 30 miles to the gallon or something. While underneath their feet, you got these maglev systems that can travel at hypersonic speeds of 3,000 miles per hour or more. And then you got fleets of anti-gravity spacecrafts, so they can travel interplanetary distances pretty quickly. I mean, traveling from Earth to Mars, I'm told, takes about 30 minutes using these anti-gravity craft. So yeah, and all of this is being kept from surface humanity for a number of reasons. One of which is kind of like economic collapse that would be caused if you released these kind of like new energy sources and these anti-gravity technologies. And of course the medical industry would collapse if all of a sudden people or medical researchers found out that sound and frequency can heal and regrow bones and regenerate limbs.
And so the second part of that question was, who is it that is in operation of these? What sort of, who is it and how many of them are there, right? This is a massive thing. What's going on?
Okay, well, the way it began was that it began with the highest level of military intelligence with the executive branch of government in the United States. I mean, here we're talking about Presidents Roosevelt and President Truman, who were first briefed about all of this. And so they set in process a system that was run by the military intelligence community to take charge of all of this. But what happened was that there needed to be funding. And so with the funding, you brought in the corporations. And that's when the secret societies came in, because these people have incredible resources and wealth. And also that they have ancient knowledge as well. I mean, like the Freemasons, for example. I mean, this is an organization that goes back many, many centuries, same as the Jesuits, the Catholic Church. And these organizations, contrary to what the public thinks, are very much steeped into understanding the science of advanced technologies. And so the Freemasons in particular began to exert a lot of influence over the direction in which these programs were run. And because the Freemasons and the secret societies, they are very good at infiltrating organizations. They were able to infiltrate major corporations, able to infiltrate the military-industrial complex themselves. That right now, in terms of who's in control of this breakaway civilization, I would say, on the one hand, there are those that are still part of the military intelligence community who still have a certain amount of control over it all. But on the other hand, you have people in these secret societies, including the Freemasons, that have a lot of control as well. And that those two groups kind of like compete against each other for the overall direction in which this is all going to be managed, and what is going to be released to the general public. But what's roughly been agreed upon by these two different entities controlling all of this is that the general public isn't ready. And what they do is they'll kind of like release crumbs to us along the way. And so that's what's happening now with these whistleblowers who have come forward, like Luis Elizondo, David Grush, Jacob Barber, and many others that are releasing some of the crumbs of this whole breakaway civilization. But it's only the very surface of what's going on. There's much more going on. But as of now, the secret societies and the military intelligence community look at surface humanity, look at us in the general public, and say, well, they're not ready yet.
So one of the things that I've been trying to, let's just say, one of the things I've been wrestling with in all this time and having guests on like yourself is that a lot of people have brought forth to me a sense of uniformity in this breakaway civilization. And while nobody's necessarily said they're an alien group of people, I mean, you're talking about humans, right, that just have broken away to this sense. I get the sense that there's a feeling of uniformity, and my brain can't wrap its mind around people who are only interested in control and power working together. And so it makes me think that there has to be factions within them in order to fight for the top. The military industrial complex, they do their part, but then maybe the Vatican, the Jesuits, et cetera, are doing theirs. And then sometimes there's got to be conflict. It's impossible for me to imagine a system in which there's no friction. It doesn't seem natural, right? And so are there factions that you've seen? And it's leading me on to my next thing, because when we talk about this, most of the time, the discussion is over European bloodlines and royalty and nobility, along with the new American and / technocrats. No one necessarily puts together a model for me that shows me also how Russia and China potentially also fit in, even though I'm fully past the idea of nation states being the ones who are really in control of things. It still makes sense to me that there is somebody over here who has the power and control of these resources, and you over here, and you over here, even though there's the attempt to move towards a one global thing. How does that work? Are there regions? Or is it an office where I have a regional director right here and they follow their orders and it's just a top down, pyramid setup? Or what have you found in that sense?
Well, yeah, that's a really incredibly complex question to answer. I mean, there's a lot of factions. There's a lot of regional differences. I mean, the Europeans manage all of this in a way that's very different to the Americans, and the Russians have their own system, and China has also its own system that it's been working on. Now, with the American system, I mean, you do have this ongoing conflict between uh, the kind of more merit-based uh, military intelligence community, where people who, the brightest and the smartest get recruited, and they're kind of like set loose and said, well, you manage this, tell us what to do here, and how do you do all of these things. Whereas you get also the secret societies, and that's not so much merit based. It's more based on this. It's almost like the way in which the mafia is run. Like, the more ruthless you are, the more of a psychopath you are. In fact, that's actually part of the training. I mean, like, you literally progress by showing that you have absolutely no empathy for others, and that's how you progress into higher leadership levels. And there have been people that have talked about this. So yeah, you have these psychopaths that are part of these secret societies. The Freemasons are mentioned. I mean, at the 33-degree and above level, because most Freemasons have no idea that their organization is involved in anything related to extraterrestrial life or managing these deep underground military bases where you have ancient technologies being found and so forth. Most of them have no idea of that. It's only at the 33-degree level where they're kind of like summoned into a meeting, and they're told, they're tested, and they're told, well, here's the Bible that you as a Freemason have been taught to worship. We want you to spit on it, and if they do spit on it, then they're told they pass, and so now they're going to be inducted into the higher degrees, where they learn all about the secret history that extraterrestrials have interbred with humanity going back thousands of years, that the ruling bloodline families trace their ancestry to these extraterrestrials, and the bloodlines and so forth, and that's how they get to believe that they are superior and deserve to run the planet. And And if the Freemason doesn't spit on the Bible, they're told, well, congratulations, you passed. You will be a 33-degree Mason for the rest of your life. And off they go. So, yeah, the Freemasons are very much a part of the control system. There are many different lodges, though. It's not just the Freemasons, many different secret societies that are able to infiltrate organizations, the militaries, the corporations are a favorite for these. There's a book that came out recently. It's called 334% Lies, and it's from a H.M. Stool, who's a German occult member who revealed the way in which these occult lodges operate. It's all about acquisition of power, and it's all about infiltrating major corporations. So this is what's going on. So it really is like a snake pit when you look at the secret societies side of things, and they operate in every country. They infiltrate all organizations, military, political, judicial. And so this is really the kind of, I think, the foundation of the whole deep state.
If you could summarize to the best of your ability on what the crumbles, or I'll just say the question and then I'll run and get this. The editors will piece this together perfectly. But could you summarize as best as possible the crumbs of knowledge in bits and pieces that we have above the 33rd degree Mason knowledge, so that we have even an inkling of what it is that they're even trying to solve or know, or what the reality is for them?
TheWayOfWillJohn.com. Exclusive content and programs on manifestation, making money, hidden knowledge. Finally, reach your full potential.
Well, what people in the secret societies and the Freemasons above the 33 degree level learn is that they have ancestry that traces back to the fallen angels that arrived on Earth prior to the destruction of Atlantis. So if a good foundation for understanding this is the Book of Enoch. It's also in the Book of Genesis as well, but it's just mentioned briefly there. But in the Book of Enoch, they go into the whole scenario where you have these 200 fallen angels, extraterrestrials that arrive on Earth, and that they have superior knowledge and superior technologies, and they very quickly establish rule over the rest of humanity, and they create a race of giants called the Nephilim, and that the Nephilim became the rulers of humanity, and that this predated Atlantis. And so Atlantis was a civilization that emerged as a result of these fallen angels sharing their knowledge, their technologies, and so forth, so that Atlantis became very highly evolved, but then eventually collapsed because of its warlike tendencies, and Plato talked about that. And that as it collapsed, a lot of the leading thinkers of the time that knew what was coming, they began to bury in secret locations like under the pyramids and so forth the advanced technologies that they had developed for a future for future use. And this was happening all over the world because Atlantis was a worldwide civilization. So you had something like this in China, something like this in Siberia, the Russian steppes, and so forth. And so these people today who see themselves as part of this ruling class, they understand that there are all these ancient technologies hidden all over the world, and many of these have incredible powers, or people who gain access to these technologies are able to develop amazing abilities. One thing would be like longevity, being able to live for centuries or even millennia. And in the Anunnaki records, they talked about 72 MEs, MEs, and these involved all kinds of abilities, such as longevity, telekinesis, telepathy, and so forth. So these rulers understood, or these people that trace their ancestry to that, they understood that there are all these technologies everywhere, that humanity has these abilities that can be activated, where being able to teleport, being able to lift things, telekinesis, and so forth, that these are all real abilities that can be developed. So they kept all this knowledge to themselves, and it was very guarded, and but they developed it. So these people are very powerful occultists, and so they see this as part of their heritage and part of the reason why they are destined to rule over the rest of humanity, because we don't know any of this. We're still questioning, well, are extraterrestrials real? Well, did Plato just make it up about Atlantis? Is there a hall of records under the Sphinx? The people are speculating, but these occultists, these secret societies, the Freemasons, so forth, they know that all of this is absolutely real, and there are these incredible technologies all over the world, buried in secret locations, and that these technologies get activated. And often, when they get activated, it's because a particular group of extraterrestrials will arrive. And so there's a kind of frequency resonance happening between technologies and different extraterrestrials. And so, we in the public arena, we're just getting an inkling of all of this. But the people really running the show, the people, the Freemasons and so forth, I mean, they understand this in a very deep way.
Mhm. Considering all of the things that you've studied, and what we've just talked on, from ancient technology to what the Freemasons know in the higher degrees, what would be, for you, if you had to choose one, maybe two, what would be the best evidence that you could put forth to put and point someone who is not into this field or in these subjects at all, and say, listen, I'm going to try and wake you up. Okay. I need you to look at this, read this, or study this, because, it's going to jolt you, and it's going to open you up to a whole new world. Do you have something that you feel has just presented so much evidence that you can't look past it anymore?
Well, one thing that I would cite is President Ronald Reagan in 1985. He in his diary, which was published as part of his memoirs, he said that he had lunch with 5 NASA astronauts, and they explained that we have the capacity to put 300 astronauts in Earth orbit. Now, that was in 1985. At the time, the space shuttle was still relatively new, and they only ever had 5 operational space shuttles, and each one could carry a maximum of 10. They never launched them simultaneously. So, how in the world would you get 300 astronauts into Earth orbit using the shuttle system? So, what Reagan was acknowledging then was the existence of a secret space program. And this secret space program, as I mentioned earlier, is funded off the books. It has space stations that are very large, with hundreds of personnel on there in space. They use stealth technologies, so astronomers can't see it. And this is something that DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has already acknowledged, that there is technology, invisibility technology, that's viable now. So in the classified programs, they utilized this decades ago to be able to hide these stealth space stations that are up there with hundreds of people. The second thing that I would say is evidence that this whole secret society, this whole breakaway civilization idea is very, very real, is the true size of the black budget. And that is that, well, there's actually 2 black budgets that are known. One is the black budget that is used to fund the intelligence agencies without there being a proper auditing and accounting, and that's around $85 billion a year. and that's known to be routed through the Pentagon, and that's where you get the $1,000 toilet seats and things like that, and that ends up going into different classified programs that have been set up. So and to the intelligence community. So that's about 85 billion, around that figure. But the unofficial black budget, this is over $1 trillion a year. This is something that is documented by attempts to audit the Pentagon in 1997, 1998, and 1999. During the Clinton administration. There were attempts to audit the Pentagon, and that they found that there was a missing trillions of dollars. An average of $1.7 trillion a year was missing in 3 auditing attempts by the Pentagon. And then when Donald Rumsfeld was about to reveal the existence of this black budget through the missing money, you had the 9/11 attacks. Well, in fact, he actually made the announcement, they made the announcement on September 10, 2001, that the Pentagon is missing all this money, and then the next day you had the 9/11 attacks. So, yeah, I would say those are 2 pieces of evidence that are pretty compelling, that this breakaway civilization does exist. It's massive, and it has utilized these advanced technologies gained, whether it's from ancient civilizations or from extraterrestrial crash retrieval operations, and that all of this has been secretly reverse engineered.
Mm. And to go back to the discussion that we were just having on also the different factions, you put out a video that I haven't seen yet, but just the title caught my head because China is potentially training AI to kill humans was the title there. And so it's just 2 subjects that are known. Once again, just like 3i Atlas, you can't escape the acronyms AI anymore in our society. So what are your thoughts on that? And then maybe you can explain what China is doing also.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence, I mean, that's a big area of concern, and I think the main concern I have and others have is that AI is like a weapon. It's like a tool, and it all depends on how you use it. And so, if we teach AI to help humanity in terms of giving assistance to humans, helping operations in health industry, helping educate people, helping commerce and so forth. I mean, all of that is very benign and is very, I think, conducive to AI playing a positive role as humanity evolves. But the danger is that there are countries such as China, that seek to weaponize AI to get a competitive advantage over their peer adversaries, such as the United States. So the Chinese military, they understand that weaponizing AI is how you can actually defeat the United States in a future war. And so the problem here is that you have the whole kind of like a Terminator scenario coming up where, okay, if you teach AI how to kill humans in large numbers and systematically and so forth, then you're setting up a foundation for, in the future, AI turning against humans and deciding that, well, humans are just too unpredictable, too aggressive. So let's wipe out the senior leadership and we'll run the planet. And all of a sudden, you're in a kind of like a Terminator-style war of humans against the robots, or maybe we get enslaved like in the Matrix. I think those are legitimate warnings, and we need to take those warnings into account, because I don't think this is unique to our planet. I mean, I've definitely come across some sources, extraterrestrial sources, saying that other planets have gone through the same thing, and the human population on those planets were eventually wiped out and hunted into extinction by the AI.
Wow. Uh, you mentioned, yeah, how you're picking up some of this information as well. Who's been the most compelling person you've met that's potentially told you or shaped your worldview on this, or a source that you've talked to personally? Like, has there been anybody in all these years that you've spoken to, whether it's a whistleblower, um, or just an inside source that has shaped or shocked you in any way?
Well, I've spoken to hundreds of different sources, and and they vary in terms of the amount of information they have to share. One source that I've been working with very closely since 2008 is he just uses the acronym JP at the moment, and he served in the U.S. Army for 4.5 years, and his story is fascinating. I mean, I've written a 3-book series about his story and how he began as someone that was having extraterrestrial contact. How when he came back to the United States after a trip to Brazil, he was immediately contacted by the military intelligence community that knew about his contacts, and they began to recruit their efforts to recruit him. And eventually, he did join the army, and he's served on missions, and he's told me about his missions. But what's very interesting about him is that he had photos. He took photos of the craft he was taken on. So that's very unusual. A lot of contactees are unable to do that, but he was able to do it. So he's got a lot of photos. Probably just over 100 now that he's released to me over the years of the different craft he's been taken on, and also that he is part of a sanctioned disclosure process that the covert operations community have launched, and that goes back to 2017 when he started to release photographs of flying triangles, flying rectangles over MacDill Air Force Base. And he shared his stories with me about being taken up into these craft. And then he had the photos of the craft as well. So you had someone who had an incredible story, but also he had evidence. And so, yeah, I would say his story is something that is still in the process of coming out, because I think a lot of people don't take him seriously yet because they just think it's too fantastic. It's like, well, let's go with a David Grush, or let's go with a Louis Elizondo, because their stories seem to be much more plausible, whereas JP's talking about going into underwater civilizations, interacting with the ant people, and which for a lot of people is a bridge too far.
Hmm. What is it then about his delivery, or have you been able to corroborate anything? What makes you? I 100% understand what you're saying, because David Grush, these guys, they're well polished. They're, for the most part, good speakers. They sit and play the part. Their claims aren't so fantastical, and so it just makes it easy to believe, right? If I can just move the truth, or if I can just lie a little bit, or whatever it is, if it's just somewhere next to the reality that I'm sitting at, it's more plausible and it's believable, and that's why those names we know. What is it about JP, or what is it that you've been able to corroborate makes you feel that he's truthful?
Well, he absolutely has no guile. I mean, he's got a he's a very simple person. I mean, he's not someone that is prone to coming up with a complex story to fool people in some way. I mean, he is describing events as they happen to him, and because I've been working with him since 2008. I mean, it was from 2008 to 2017. I mean, he was sharing a lot of these stories with me, but I never published anything. I never revealed him to the public, because I thought, well, there's absolutely no evidence for this. But then in 2017, he started giving me photographs and some videos as well of the craft he was seeing. So that really was what uh, compelled me to conclude that this is absolutely real. He is having these experiences, and that he's being chosen to play a special role. And I think that his personality, as I said, he has absolutely no guile. People who listen to him instantly resonate with him as someone that's very innocent, uh, someone that uh, doesn't show any degree of deception. Whereas someone like David Grush, Lou Elizondo, yeah, these are all very polished speakers, and they work with the intelligence community, and people in the intelligence community. I mean, they lie as part of the job. I mean, that's a job requirement. You
Right.
got to lie.
Yeah.
If it's classified, you got to go with the cover story.
Mm-hmm. There's a whole nother debate as well on the nature of reality that has to do with where any sort of, let's say, craft or being or entity, where they're coming from. Are they extraterrestrial or are they extra dimensional or interdimensional? Sorry. And so is there, in your degree, are we looking at another form or forms from just another planetary system, or are we looking at things and beings that can, traverse the entire scope of the dimensional reality?
Well, I'd have to say all of the above. I think, though, that a majority do come from other planets. I mean, the whole
Okay.
extraterrestrial hypothesis that they're traveling here, not so much in superluminal ships that can make the journey because they can travel at so many times the speed of light. I think they're able to utilize space-time portals, and so that they can make the trip from Pleiades, which is about 400 light years away, to the Earth in a matter of hours, because they utilize these space-time portals. I think the interdimensional element is something that happens more in terms of the occult side of things, where you're able to summon entities from other dimensions. And some of these entities are described as reptilian, look very devilish. And so this is where you get into the whole kind of demonic, satanic side of things, where they're invoking demons, and by these elaborate blood sacrifice rituals, and also being able to precisely articulate the name of a particular demon or extraterrestrial or a reptilian. And that's one of the things that I found to be very accurate, that when we're talking about these non-human extraterrestrials, the reptilians, that they have very complex names, and it needs to be pronounced in a certain way, otherwise it they'll take it as an insult. So you got to pronounce their name in a particular way. So in an occult ceremony, you can literally summon them out of a particular dimension into our dimension, and they can give information. They can help a person establish power in a hierarchy. So yes, I think the interdimensional is also a part of all of this.
Mm-hmm. I see. So, but you basically separate them into two different realms, or in some sense, right? That there's this interdimensional, let's say, keys, portals, ways of summoning things that are from there, and there are also beings, entities from other planets here. They're able to move through our space-time continuum by utilizing, whether it's wormholes or anti-gravitic, spacecraft of some kind. Okay. Considering that actually, you know what? Let me ask you my one question on Satanism here, because that term, just in and of itself, has been getting a lot of play over the last few years. Finally, as it kind of has like breached the zeitgeist. What role does Satanism play in their let's say, in their worldview, in the breakaway civilization worldview? Because it seems to be rather apparent. I mean, you touched on it with the psychopaths. Is this their form? You see people talking about how there's a need to invert everything and how they want to do that for a whole host of reasons. What role does Satanism play for them?
Yeah, well, when we're talking about secret societies and the higher degrees of Freemasonry, then we get into the whole question of Satanism. And we also have references to Satanism as being secretly in control of the West by certain people, like President Putin of Russia. He's said on several occasions that the West is run by Satanists. And so, what evidence is there of that? Well, there was a book called The Franklin Cover-Up, authored by John DeCamp, and that came out in the 1990s, and he detailed the role that Satanism plays in using children, involving them in these rituals, whereby, or in these sting operations, whereby politicians are compromised. And once you compromise these politicians, then you own them. And the ones that you own, you promote. The ones that don't want to play ball, well, then you just make sure that they never get to higher office. And so Satanists are very good at being able to play the system by compromising people through these rituals, and also they are able to summon these. Well, people call them demons. I think that a lot of the so-called demons are actually extraterrestrials of non-human uh, physiology, like the Draco reptilians are often mentioned. And if you summon one of these beings in a ceremony, then they are very, very powerful beings. And I think that's where Satan comes from. The term Satan comes from people in these kind of like occult ceremonies, summoning these very powerful reptilian demonic entities, and the most powerful of them is known as Satan, and some also talk about Lucifer. So there's a kind of like some like to distinguish between Lucifer and Satan. Say Lucifer is actually misunderstood, that he's all about developing one's abilities, as opposed to Satan, who is all about closing down the heart chakra and controlling and manipulating people. So so there's differences in the way the occult works, but definitely I think Satanism is very real, has plays a big role eh, traditionally in how the world has been run. But I think recently there's been a lot of effort to expose it, and people in a so-called Earth Alliance, there's military intelligence personnel in this Earth Alliance that involves the major nations. So Russia and the United States, at a certain level, are cooperating, and they're cooperating to take down this satanic deep state.
Mm. This is a huge switch over there, but we just had on Guy Anderson, and we had a discussion because he is deep into one Tartaria, as well human cloning in general, because it's I just never knew. I growing up in the 90s, I remember Dolly, and I talked about that on the podcast. It's like, you remember the sheep thing, and then I don't remember anything else. I remember the way that we talked about cloning as if it was going to be this thing, and then as the 2000s and then the mid 2000s, I'm not hearing anything about it. Like it's just not on the front page of the news. It was huge, like it was going to alter our world, and then it stopped. So am I to believe that they stopped testing on or they stopped, attempting to clone humans, or what is your research shown in that field at all?
Yeah, that's again an important question. I think the cloning goes back to at least the 1970s, according to my research, that the first cloned beings began to appear in the 1970s, and they also used some of these cloned beings or synthetic beings to begin replacing leaders. And so this is where you get into one of those areas that again people find very hard to believe, but is very disturbing, and that is that they start cloning leaders or replacing leaders with some kind of synthetic human, and and that apparently has been happening since the late 1970s, and that's one of the things that really uh, is kind of very disturbing for me, is that they were able to develop technologies to kind of like clone a person and then replace that person if they wanted to. And they could also transfer consciousness as well. This is, again, a very disturbing technology that goes all the way back to, the whole fallen angels thing. And like we're talking tens of thousands of years, that they know that it's possible to transfer the consciousness of a person from one body to another. And you can imagine the power you would get if you were able to do that. You start moving consciousness of people around. You replace a world leader with someone that you want in that place, and all of a sudden, someone like Bill Clinton is not the Bill Clinton that was elected to
Right.
office, but someone else.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that opens up a whole a whole other discussion, which we're gonna have to have some other time. But there was one last question that I wanted to ask you. There was, and now I don't remember. I think it was only last year. The mall. It happened in Florida. The mall alien. This conspiracy. There's a whole host of things that people say about it. I don't know. I think it was in Miami. To be honest, do you find any? I haven't done any deep research into what the claims truly are, but do you find any claims viable? The ones that were stating that there were entities seen or aliens, or why is there such a response by the police? And then the mainstream story being that there was just a fight, right? So for many people, it doesn't add up. Did you ever look into that?
I did. There were a few people that I found that were very credible witnesses describing seeing this. I think it was like a 10-foot tall alien suddenly
Mm-hmm.
appearing in this shopping mall, and that caused a lot of panic. And of course, you had all the police cars kind of descending there, and they tried to explain it away, saying, well, it was just gangs fighting and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. But there were witnesses that described seeing this very tall alien there, and
Mm-hmm.
that to me is very plausible, because they're able to come in and out of our like 3D reality through these portals. It could have been a kind of test. I think that is something that worries the authorities, that ultimately a lot of these extraterrestrials can just show up at any time, at any place, and they can't be controlled that way. So and that kind of brings us back full circle, that I think the whole 3i Atlas thing is an example of this. It's something that can't be controlled, and I think in a way, uh, like the controllers have run out of time. Like they were supposed to get us up to speed about some of the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't done that. And so I think the extraterrestrials taking matters into their own hand. I think 3i Atlas is a part of that. I think it's going to reveal itself, and kind of like take the question, or make the question, well, are aliens real, moot, because
Mm-hmm.
people will know the answer. But yeah, I mean the other things like this Miami incident, I think that's, and there was a similar incident in Las Vegas as well, around the same time. That this is where they're just popping into and out of our 3D reality, and they have the ability to do that at any time.
Mm. Well, Dr. Michael Salla, it's been a lot. We're going to have to do a deeper dive into a whole host of subjects. We'll do this at another time. I really appreciate you taking the time. Where should people go? Where would you like us to send everybody? We'll link out to that. I know you have a ton of different things that you've done. Where would you
Yeah.
like us to send it?
Oh, yeah, they can just go to my website, exopolitics.org, and there I have all my books. I have my own podcast. I do regular webinars, and yeah, that's the place to go. So thanks, Will, for having me on the show.
Of course, anytime, you guys, we will link to all this stuff, of course, in the show notes or in the description box. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Thanks again.
Way of Will John.